Hi everyone. So today we will see the next session, that is we are approaching towards the quantum mechanical model. Till now we have studied about the Bohr atomic model, in which we have studied the failures of Bohr atomic model, that is some of the things the Bohr couldn't explain the spectrum. That means what are they? They are, one is he cannot explain the doublet, that is each line is made up of two lines, the doublet of the atomic spectra. Then he cannot explain multi-electron system, that means only one electron system he is able to explain. Next is the splitting of the spectra in presence of electric as well as magnetic field, that means Stark effect and Zeeman effect. And he could not explain the chemical bonds between the molecules. So these are the failures of the Bohr atomic model. So after that, new developments came, and then we are approaching towards the quantum mechanical model, and some scientists again put forward some developments regarding the structure of atom or the hydrogen spectra as well as the structure of atom. So the new development was mainly based on two things. One was, it is not a quantum mechanical model, but it is developing towards, we are approaching towards the quantum mechanical model. So two scientists put forward two developments, mainly the dual nature of matter. One was the dual nature of matter, and the second development was Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So these are the two things or two developments, uncertainty principle. Okay. So these are the two developments or major developments takes place about the structure of atom before we are explaining the quantum mechanics, or before the quantum mechanics come into picture. Okay. Now one is the dual nature of matter. Dual means what? We will study. That is, if we know the particle nature, and we also know that it has got a wave nature. So that is the dual nature of matter and the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Now we will see in detail what is dual nature of matter. A scientist called de Broglie, who is it? De Broglie, a scientist called de Broglie in 1924. He observed that, light has got both wave nature as well as particle nature, isn't it? We have seen that light has got both nature, that is wave nature as well as the particle nature. So like this radiation, matter can also exist in both forms. That was his explanation. Actually, this de Broglie, there was no, he doesn't have any experimental evidence, but it was only a hypothesis. Listen, it was only a hypothesis, or we say that de Broglie's hypothesis. Okay. So he formulated, or he postulated that the first postulate was light having a dual nature. That means light behaves as both particle as well as wave. Matter can also have this dual nature. That is, matter can also exist in both wave nature as well as particle nature. Okay, that was his observation. That was his postulate, the first postulate. So he said that light photon, photon, that is light photon having a momentum as well as wavelength, isn't it? Light is having both momentum as well as wavelength. Momentum means what? What is momentum? Momentum is equal to mass into velocity. So that is the particle nature. Mass into velocity. And wavelength means the wave character. So since the photon has got momentum as well as wavelength, the matter or the electron has also got lambda or particle nature, wavelength as well as momentum. He formulated that just as photon having a wavelength and momentum, electrons also have a wavelength as well as a momentum. So this was his hypothesis. And he gave a mathematical expression for that also, for relating the lambda and the momentum. And that was the famous de Broglie equation, and he awarded Nobel Prize in physics. Okay. So he formulated an expression, lambda is equal to h by m into v. So this was the famous de Broglie equation, that is connecting both the wave nature as well as the particle nature. See, lambda is equal to, lambda is called as the de Broglie wavelength and h is the Planck's constant. What is the value? 6.626 into 10 to the power minus 34 joule second. Keep in mind. And mass and velocity. See, so this is the equation, and or you can have the equation as, lambda is equal to h by p also. Why p? Because p is equal to mass into velocity, that is momentum, isn't it? So this is the equation which was given by de Broglie. So that was only a hypothesis which de Broglie put forward. That means like photon has got wavelength as well as momentum, the electrons can also have wavelength as well as momentum. So he formulated a equation relating both the wave nature and the particle nature. And the surprising part was, this de Broglie's hypothesis has got the experimental evidence. You know, this has been experimentally proved as correct by two scientists called as Davison and German. Okay, this scientist called as Davison and German experiment. It is called as Davison and German experiment. These two scientists experimentally proved the hypothesis of de Broglie as correct. So that is why it is called as Davison and German experiment. Now what was the experiment? They proved that like the photons or the light is having dual nature, that is wave and particle nature, the light undergoes a phenomenon called as diffraction, which was shown by a property shown by waves. We have discussed that in the early sessions. That means light shows the property of wave function, wave character, that is diffraction. I have told you like diffraction and interference are the two wave properties, and the particle property was the black body radiation, photoelectric effect, etc. So in that case we told about that light is having a wave nature. Okay, so the electrons beam in analogy to the light waves or the light beam or the photons, the electron beam also undergoes diffraction. So diffraction is a property which is shown by waves. It's a wave character. So this electron beam shows the wave nature, that is diffraction. So then they proved that electrons can also have a wave nature. Diffraction means bending of rays. Okay. So electron beam also undergoes diffraction, which is a property shown by waves. So by that experiment, this de Broglie's hypothesis have a very well proof of its hypothesis. That is, it is valid. The hypothesis is valid and it gets into a theory. Correct? So that is about the dual nature of matter. And this electron beam that is showing the diffraction is used in electron microscope. The principle behind this electron beam or the wave nature of the electron beam is used in electron microscope. And the normal microscope is used by the principle of the ordinary particle nature. The wave nature is shown by the electron microscope, and the electron microscope is having a very high magnitude of 15 million times greater magnitude than the ordinary microscope. So that is the principle used behind the electron microscope. Now, so on summing up, de Broglie said what? De Broglie said that every moving object, listen, every moving object has got both particle nature as well as the wave nature. We know for us, if we are moving or some car or some substances or some ball, anything which is moving will have a particle, both particle character and wave character. But the problem is, for us or for a stone falling or when a car is moving, we cannot feel that wave character in it. Why? Why? Because you know the mass for all these bodies are very, very high. So if the mass is high, the wavelength is very, very small to be measured. That is why it is not practically determined, isn't it? Or practically feel the wave nature for the macroscopic objects. But for the microscopic objects like electrons or very small subatomic particles, you know, if the mass is very small, then the lambda will be very high. So that wavelength can be measured. That is why the electrons or the subatomic particles or mainly the microscopic particles, we have that field of dual wave. I mean, we have that field of wave character in them, and not for the macroscopic particles like car or buses or falling stones or moving balls, etc. We can't feel the wave nature. Why? Because the mass of that particle is more or very large when compared with the wavelength. So that is all about the de Broglie hypothesis, which comes into a theory which was made from the experiment from Davison and German, that the electron beam undergoes diffraction, which is a property which is characterized by the wave nature or waves. Okay, so that is about the de Broglie equation. So is it clear? Now we will do a problem for this de Broglie equation. It's very simple. Okay. Now calculate the wavelength. Okay, calculate the wavelength of a ball of having mass 0.1 kg and velocity 0.1 kg and velocity is 10 meter per second. So it's a very simple straightforward question. Just calculate the lambda of a ball. Ball means a moving object having a mass. It is having a mass of 0.1 kg. The mass is very huge when compared to electron, microscopic particle, and the velocity 10 meter per second. So which equation you will have this? That is lambda, de Broglie equation. Lambda is equal to h by mv, isn't it? H by mv, or h is equal to, I already told you, you have to study all some of these constants. So h is the Planck's constant. It is 6.626. You can approximate while doing the numericals. You can approximate into 6.6 into 10 raised to minus 34 joule second divided by what is the mass? Mass is 0.1 kg. 1 kg into what is velocity? 10 meter per second. So this is 10 meter per second. The kg is okay. If it was gram or milligram, you have to convert it into kg. If it is meter per second, if it is centimeter, it is gram. So please beware with the units. Okay, just see whether the units are correct and then you substitute it, and then you will get the answer. Just do that. Okay, do it. The calculations you have to do and tell me. So this is the calculation of a lambda of ball. This will be, lambda will be very small because the mass is high when compared to electrons. So you have to be logical when doing the sums. Whether you got the answer is right or wrong, you have to have a logical approach on that. Okay, if the mass is very high, you have to get the lambda as very small because it cannot be differentiated, or it cannot feel that wave nature. So it should get that kind of an answer. So to have some logical understanding of this. Okay. Now we will do one more sum, that is calculate the mass of a photon. See, calculate the mass of a photon. Calculate the mass of a photon whose wavelength is, whose lambda is 3.6 angstrom. You know the angstrom is very small quantity, angstrom. So better you convert it into meter or in centimeter. Okay, or angstrom, because we will see mass, we have to see mass. Okay, now how will you do this? Calculate the mass of a photon whose lambda is 3.6 into 10 raised, 3.6 angstrom. Now you have to see the mass. Which equation you will make use of? Again, lambda is equal to h by mv, isn't it? And lambda is given, but you have to calculate the mass. So m is equal to, m you go into numerator side, then m is equal to h by lambda into v. Okay. Now you know h is equal to what? H is equal to 6.6 into 626, but for numerical purpose we approximate. So minus 34 joule second divided by what is velocity. The velocity is not given. So how will you count for the velocity? How will you count for the velocity? There you have that concept. That means the velocity of photon is equal to the velocity of electron. Sorry, velocity of light. Velocity of light. Isn't it? So you know what is the velocity of light? 3.8 into 10 raised to minus 8 meter per second or 10 raised to minus 10 meter per second. Now you choose what value you should use, because if lambda is Armstrong, so your Armstrong has to be converted either into meter or into centimeter. So according to the Armstrong value you are changing, you put the velocity of light. So you know 1 Armstrong is equal to 10 raised to minus 10 meter, isn't it? 10 raised to minus 10 meter. So we will make it into meter. Okay. So m is equal to, mass is equal to, you have to find out. So lambda is equal to 3.6 into 10 raised to minus 10 meter. Correct? Meter. Then into, so velocity of photon is velocity of light. So you have to take it from meter. So it is 3.8 into 10 raised to minus 8 meter per second. So just see the calculation what the answer is and tell me. So this is how you go for a question. Numericals. It's very easy. If you know what is given, first you have to write, I always tell, first you have to write what is given in the equation, then the formula, isn't it? Then the formula, then substituting the formula with units, isn't it? And then the answer with units. These are the 4 steps you come across with a numerical, while doing a numerical, because for the steps CBSE has given marks. So like that you have to correct. So this is just a few questions from the de Broglie equation. Okay. Now the second is, just do it, okay. Just do the numerical. Now the second thing is, as we have told you, the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. What is it? Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Uncertainty principle. So from the name itself you know there is some uncertainty predicting in this, right? Yes. That means Heisenberg, a scientist in 1926, he formulated or he observed that it is simple. His definition is that it is impossible, okay, it is impossible to know the exact position and momentum of a moving electron simultaneously. Once again I will tell you, it is impossible to locate the exact, I am using the word exact. So it is impossible to locate the exact position as well as the momentum. Momentum means more precisely the velocity, because mass is always a constant. You can't change that. So it is impossible to determine or locate the exact position and the momentum of a moving electron or a moving particle simultaneously. You got it? That means if you have a 100% accuracy in position, you can't have a 100% accuracy in the velocity or momentum. So he says that it is impossible to locate or it is impossible to find the exact position and momentum accurately, the exact position and the exact momentum accurately for a moving particle. Simultaneously, that is important. Simultaneously, you can't have both this position as well as momentum. If you find the position accurately, you will have an inaccurate momentum, or if you find the accurate momentum, you can't have an accurate position, location. Okay, so that is, and he gave an equation, mathematical expression for that, that is delta x into delta p, where delta x is the error in position. That is how much accuracy is there in the position, that is delta x, that is the error in position, and this is the error in momentum. That is greater than or equal to h by 2 pi. Okay, so that is, sorry, h by 4 pi. So delta x into delta p must be equal or greater than, that is the product of the error, that is delta x and delta p. The product of these two must be always, it must not be equal to 0, but it must be always equal to or greater than a quantum property, that is h by 4 pi. Okay. Now what is delta x? Delta x is the error in position. Sorry, delta x. And delta p is the error in momentum. So momentum you can have again as delta x into momentum, you can write as m into delta v. Can I write this? Because mass into velocity. Who is changing? The velocity is changing. So you can put m into delta v. That is equal to or greater than or equal to h by 4 pi. Or you can write it as delta x into delta v is greater than or equal to h by 4 pi m. So this is the famous Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Which means you cannot find or exact position as well as momentum simultaneously for a moving electron or a particle. That means if there is, see, listen, if delta x is very small, that is that delta x is very small, which means what? Which means what? There is accuracy in this position. Very small means the error is very small. That means the exact position we are having it. That is the meaning of delta x is very small. That means the accuracy is very high. That is why delta x is very small. If the accuracy of delta x is very high, that means, for example, say it is equal to 0. Let us say if the delta x is equal to 0, that means what? You are 100% accurate where, say, an electron is having a position. We know where the electron is residing or where the electron is there. That is the meaning of delta x is equal to 0. It is highly precise value. You know that exactly it is there. Then you see, you substitute the equation. If delta x is 0, what will be this equation? If we want to find the delta v or velocity, what you will have? Delta v is equal to h by 4 pi m into delta x from this equation. See, this will come here. You want to find delta v. So if delta x is equal to delta v will become infinity. You can't calculate the accurate velocity of that electron if you know the accurate position of that electron. That is what Heisenberg's uncertainty principle says. That means you cannot have both these quantities simultaneously. You can't predict both these quantities simultaneously for a moving electron or a stationary electron. No, not stationary, it's a moving because V is there, no? So for a moving electron. So this is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Heisenberg, no, he always deals with uncertainty principles. Like Heisenberg solely was the man who introduced the hybridization theory. You will study that in chemical bonding. The hybridization also the same thing. The same thing we have seen in this. There is always an uncertainty where the electron is located in the hybridization. So he always has a happiness to find out the uncertainty principles, Heisenberg's. Okay. So this was the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So that is delta x into delta v is greater than or equal to h by 4 pi m. Got it? Or suppose if you want an analogy to that, see, you have a thin sheet of paper, a very thin sheet of paper. Now if you want to, very thin sheet of paper, see, if you want to find the thickness of this sheet of paper, if you want to find the thickness of a sheet of paper, you must have a scale which has calibrated where the thickness, the unit is less than. You can have a unit which has to measure the thickness of the paper, isn't it? You have very such small calibration needed to find the thickness of a paper, isn't it? In the same way, that is why it says that we cannot determine both the position as well as the momentum of a particle, moving particle exactly or simultaneously. So you got that concept? That is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Or again you can say, see, if delta V is 0, that means you know the correct velocity with which an electron is going. Then what happens if delta x, so if it is delta x, this is delta v. If delta v is 0, you know delta x is infinity. So the position you can't find exactly. So that is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So you got that point? Okay. Now we will see what is the significance of Heisenberg's uncertainty principle in the structure of atom. You see, till now, according to Bohr atom model, you are saying that the electrons are revolving in a circular orbits. The electrons are revolving in a circular orbits having a fixed radius, isn't it? A fixed radius and with a fixed energy and with a fixed velocity. This was the assumptions we are having, and we also calculated the energy, the radius and the velocity of an electron moving in a Bohr, according to Bohr. But when the uncertainty comes into picture, what uncertainty says? It says that you cannot determine exactly the simultaneous position as well as the momentum of an electron, moving electron. Here see, if I say if this L is equal to 1, the first orbit, if an electron is moving in a circular orbit having a fixed radius, then it is having a fixed energy, it is having a fixed velocity. We have calculated that 2.16 into 10 raised to 16 meter per second Z by n. So according to Bohr, the electron have that velocity, or he said that the velocity and positions are fixed, or you can calculate simultaneously the velocity as well as the position. That was the failure of the Bohr model, because according to uncertainty, he says that you cannot do that. So we are making a change in that orbit. What do you call it as? You call it circular orbits, right? You call circular orbits. So now we are changing the name of orbit or the trajectory or the path. The uncertainty principle or the Heisenberg says that you cannot have a well-defined orbit for an electron, or you cannot say that the electrons are moving in a well-defined orbit or stationary orbits or a stationary path or trajectories, which means that if it was stationary or it is a well-defined path, then you can have exactly the velocity and the position, but it is not so. So that there was the failure of this Bohr model. So actually, frankly speaking, you cannot determine the radius, the exact radius of a isolated gaseous atom. It is very, very difficult to determine the exact radius of an isolated gaseous atom or an isolated atom, not gaseous only, atom. You can only have an covalent radii or atomic radii and all. For an isolated atom, where there is no bonding, you cannot have or you cannot determine the exact radius of that atom. Only when it is bonded with a chemical bond, you can get the only relative atomic radii you can have. You cannot have the correct atomic radii. Okay, just like that. So that was, now the orbit is getting a no sense. So we are saying the path. We are just saying that you cannot say or you cannot have a definite path for the electron to move. That was the significance. And then one more thing is, the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is not applicable for the macroscopic bodies. Because macroscopic bodies means what? That is irrelevant. If you apply this Heisenberg's uncertainty principle, that is delta x, delta x into delta v is greater than or equal to h by 4 pi m. Now if we apply this for a macroscopic body, which is having a definite mass, then this delta x into delta v will be very small. This will be, the product will be very small, and if you want to find out 1, then that measurement is, there is no real consequence of that measurement. What I mean to say that. That means there is no point in measuring in that way, because we cannot calculate that, because it is very less in quantity. That is 10 to the power minus, if we calculate, the product is, for example, if it is 10 raised to minus 39 or something, if we want to calculate 1, it will be again what? A very small quantity, which is absolutely difficult to measure. So that is why we say that Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is only valid for microscopic objects or subatomic particles like electrons, positrons, etc. So for that microscopic objects, this Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is valid, because it is easy to measure. Okay, that is why the measurement is easy. It's a valid measurement, not very small. Definitely it has got a larger value than what we have done in a macroscopic object. So that is why we say that the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle is mostly valid in microscopic elements, okay, microscopic particles. So that is all about what Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Hope you understood it. Okay, now we will see one numerical for this Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Okay, that is a microscope. Okay, we will do one. A golf ball. Okay, there is a problem in text 2.16. It has got a mass of. It has got a ball. Okay, whatever be it. It has got a mass of 40 gram. Okay, and a speed of 45 meter per second. Listen, the numerical is, you have having a ball of having a mass of 40 gram and a speed of 45 meter per second. Now what again it is said that if the speed can be measured with an accuracy, listen, if the speed can be measured with an accuracy of 2%, speed means velocity. So velocity measurement is given. That is, it is about an accuracy of 2%. What is the velocity? 45. Okay, then calculate the uncertainty in position. So delta V is given. We have to calculate delta X, that is position. This is the question. Now how you will do it? How you will do it? Apply the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. So before that, how will you calculate the delta V? You know V, the speed is given as 45 meter per second. The accuracy is given as 2%. So what is delta V? Delta V is equal to 45 into the 2% of the accurate. That means 2 by 100. So that will become something. So it will become 0.9 meter per second. Do that. Okay. Now, if you want to calculate delta X, what is the formula? You have to write the formula. That's mark for formula. That is delta X into delta V is equal to H by 4 pi m. Isn't it? The mass is given, right? 40 gram. This is meter per second. Meter per second. So convert it into kilogram. Correct? So delta X is equal to, okay, delta X is equal to H by 4 pi m into delta V. You substitute it. What is it? Delta H is equal to 6.6 into 10 raised to minus 34 joule second divided by 4. 4 into, what is pi? 3.14 into, what is m? 40 gram. So what is it? 40 into 10 raised to minus 3 kilogram into, what is delta V? Delta V is 0.9 meter per second. See, substitute with units. There is mark for that. Substitute with units. Then just you substitute and get me the result. What is the inaccuracy of delta X, or what is the uncertainty in this position? So you will get that. So, understood? So this is a simple problem relating to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Okay. So that is all the two developments, the major developments which looking forward to the quantum mechanical model. That is what it is titled as towards quantum mechanical model. Now we have approached the quantum mechanical model. That is, you are starting the new topic which is quantum mechanics. Okay. Now we will see what quantum mechanics is. Okay. So we have seen the two developments. One is by the de Broglie and the other is by the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Now the true story is there. That is, you are passing into quantum mechanics. Okay. That is, the first was what? First was the Max Planck's quantum theory, and the second is the quantum mechanics. Here we are taking both the dual nature of this electron. That is, both the wave nature as well as the particle nature. According to classical physics, what Newton said, Newton was talking only about the particle nature, isn't it? Newton's corpuscular theory. He failed to explain the wave nature of this particle. The laws of motion was accurate, it is valid, but the particle nature he cannot. Or see, Newton's laws of motion was applicable for the objects like falling stone or orbital planetary motion, etc. Isn't it? But he cannot explain the wave character of that. But in the case of quantum mechanics is that branch of science which deals with both the particle nature as well as the wave nature. That is the beauty of this quantum mechanics. It deals with the particle nature as well as the wave nature, and it explains most of the things which the Bohr cannot explain. Okay. So this is about this quantum mechanics. So both the particle nature and the wave nature are there in quantum mechanics. Okay. Now, you know, the de Broglie has put forward the dual nature. But actually the quantum mechanics was introduced by two scientists, that is our Heisenberg, the uncertainty principle Heisenberg, as well as a great scientist which is called as Schrödinger. Okay, this way quantum mechanics, it is called as Schrödinger. A scientist in 1926. The credit goes to the Schrödinger. So quantum mechanics was developed by Schrödinger as well as Heisenberg in 1926. And there is a very, very famous equation which is called as the Schrödinger wave equation. On giving the solution, we have the quantum mechanical model for an atom. Or it gives the solution for that Schrödinger wave equation gives the quantum mechanical model of an atom. That is very, very important. You don't have to study about the equation or the derivation of an equation or equation, but still, whoever study the quantum mechanics, they have to know what is at least the equation is. Okay, so I will just write the equation, that is the Schrödinger wave equation. And you know, here the particle nature we are not considering too much. In this quantum mechanics, we are considering the wave nature. 90% we are considering the wave nature of the particle in quantum mechanics. And Schrödinger has given a very, very famous formula, or it is called as Schrödinger wave equation. It is called as the Schrödinger wave equation, which is as d square psi by dx square plus d square psi by dy square plus d square psi by dz square plus 8 pi square m by h into e minus b into psi is equal to 0. This is the famous Schrödinger equation, which you don't want to study, but just to have a look of that. You have to know. This is the famous Schrödinger wave equation, which leads to the quantum mechanical theory of the star, or explaining the structure of the atom. Okay, so this is the theory, and you have to only study that on simplifying this equation, we will have a small equation, that is, here this the de Broglie's dual nature is also comes into picture. Both the wave particle as well as the wave nature as well as the particle nature. But more on the wave nature. Okay. So this is simplified. You get an equation as E psi is equal to X psi. See, this is on simplifying this equation. You will get E psi is equal to X psi. Psi is called as wave function. We will deal with later. It is called as a wave function. And H is called as a Hamiltonian operator. Hamiltonian. It is called as a Hamiltonian operator. Hamiltonian operator means which describes the coordinates of x, y, z and all. So on this equation, on simplifying this equation, you will get E psi is equal to X psi. You cannot cut the psi and psi because it is not an integer or something, it is a wave function, it is a function. So you cannot cut it. So E is the energy of that system. Now energy means what? Energy means all the sum of the kinetic energy of the particle as well as the potential energy as well as the repulsive attraction and the repulsive potential as well as the attractive potential. See, energy, what here the energy is considering as the kinetic energy of the particles, moving particle, as well as there is a repulsive potential between the electron repulsion and the nucleus repulsion because of the same charge. Also the attractive potential, that means what? The electron and the nucleus attraction. So all these energies are taken into consideration for this E. And you will get a solution for this equation, which is the quantum mechanical model, which you call it as quantum numbers. You will study later in this chapter only. So on solving this equation, on solving this Schrodinger equation, you will get what is called as the quantum numbers. Okay, so let it be like that. Now we will say what is psi. We have said is psi. Now what is psi? The significance of psi in a hydrogen atom. Okay, so what is psi in hydrogen atom, or connecting the hydrogen atom with the Schrodinger equation. Okay, so you know I told you that on simplifying you get E psi is equal to H psi, where H is an operator which is called as Hamiltonian operator, and psi is called as a wave function. Wave function. Now we will see in detail what is exactly this wave function, or why this psi is called as. I said psi is a wave function. Wave function means what? I can just give an analogy for wave function as, see, you set the wave property. The electrons behaves as a wave nature. Now the waves are like this, isn't it? Waves are like this. Now the psi, if you plot psi, you will have a sine wave. The sine wave is like this, isn't it? Sine waves are like this. Now it has got an amplitude. You have studied the characteristics of waves like amplitude, frequency, wavelength, etc. Now this amplitude in a wave, where we call it as an amplitude, just the same way you can say the amplitude as in a wave, electronic wave, as psi. That means the displacement, it is the upward direction, then it is having a plus sign. If it is the downward direction, it has got a minus sign. So psi is having both a plus sign as well as a minus sign. So you can say, you can relate this psi as an amplitude in a wave. Exactly what it means is, see, I already told you it is a wave function. Now what is a wave function? That means, to say it very simple, I may say the psi gives exactly the address of an electron. See, that's what I want to say. Address means what? Where this electron is lying in that, you can't say orbit now. You can say it as orbital. See, a new word. The psi is called as a wave function or an orbital. Actually, this psi has got no physical meaning at all. It is just a wave function in which I can say it is having the coordinates in the three direction. A three-dimensional relation is there in the psi. Or I can again simplify it as, if you have a psi or an orbital, what an orbital means is, this electron is residing in which axis? There are three dimension means three axes. Now from the point of psi, you can say that whether the electron is in the x direction, or it is in the y direction, or it is in the z direction. That is x, which means it gives only the coordinates where the electron is lying. And that is called as orbital. So now the orbit is replaced by orbital. Okay, you can have a three-dimensional. That is why I said that on solving the Schrodinger wave equation, you will get something called as quantum numbers. And what is this quantum numbers? Quantum numbers is nothing but a three-dimensional thing which gives you the address of an electron. Address means which shell is that electron, now what is its orientation, what is its shape, everything you will get in that by solution of this Schrodinger wave equation. You will get the wave function psi, in which all the details of an electron, we will say no address of our house. If you say in Trivandrum, if you have a house in Trivandrum, now where is exactly in this Trivandrum? If you say it's Bengaluru, and then at Bengaluru where is it? Then there are having certain fixed address, right? Likewise, you have a fixed address for you all. Likewise, the electron is also having a fixed address. For example, in the school, if your school is like this, then there is a class in the 10th class, and the 10th class is also having some divisions A, B and C. Now where the student, say X, name is X, where is that student? The address of the student in the school is, he is studying in so and so school, he is studying in 10th standard, or he is studying in the 10A division of the 10th standard, right? So these are the clarifications made by the student, or the details of that student. Likewise, the address of the electron is given by simply the sign or the wave function. Now you got that, what is exactly the wave function? You have a hang on that? Okay, you have the feel of that. That means it has got no physical meaning. It just represents the address of atom. That means where, in which shell, is it the first shell the orbit is lying, and what is the shape of that orbital. Now what is the orientation, whether it is oriented in xy direction or xz direction or like that. So all that picture or details or address of this electron is given by the psi. Or if you want analogy, since it is a wave, it's a sine wave, we represent by like this, we can have a plus and minus sign. The amplitude is what is called as psi. See, like if you want to say in light waves you have studied, there is no meaning for amplitude, but the square of amplitude has got the meaning. In the same way, the psi has got no physical meaning, whereas the psi square, see, it's a very important thing, psi square has got a very, very important meaning. Like the same way we studied in light, the amplitude has got nothing but square of amplitude, which is good for the loudness and all. You have studied. So in the same way, psi has got no meaning, but psi square has got very, very important meaning. Psi is nothing but a wave function which give you the address of that electron. That is by means of quantum numbers. We will study later. Okay, so that is a wave function or orbital. Now coming to psi square. What is psi square? It is the square of psi. Square of psi means what? Square of psi means, you will say it as, again a new word for us, probability. As I said, Bohr said that there is an exact position and velocity for an electron, and we calculated it also. But what the Heisenberg said, you cannot have a fixed trajectory or a path for moving electron. We can only say a region, or you can say that we can only have a probability for finding an electron around a nucleus. That is the exact word. The probability for finding an electron around a nucleus is what is called as psi square. So that is the difference between psi and psi square. Now you got it. What is psi and psi square? Psi square means you know, or you are only giving a probability. You are not giving 100% accurate. You are only giving, okay, this is the nucleus, and you can have anywhere between this nucleus, you can find an electron. That's all. You cannot say here it is an electron there or here there is an electron. No. The probability for finding an electron is in such space, in this space. That's all. That is what is called as psi square. Clear? And what is psi? Psi is a wave function. It's just a function which says you the exact address of that electron. Okay, so that is the difference between psi and psi square. That's very important. Psi has got no physical meaning. It is just as the amplitude in a wave. But psi square has got a very good meaning. That means it represents the probability for finding out an electron around a small area or around a nucleus. Correct? So that is the difference between psi and psi square. Very, very important. Okay, so this is all about an introduction for the quantum mechanical model of atom. In the next class, we will see the quantum numbers. Now, what exactly is the address of an electron? Or how can you find where the electron is? What is the shape of that orbital? What is the orientation of that orbital? Etc. etc. We can see in the next session. So, till now, read the textbook thoroughly because it is a very new topic for you, the quantum mechanics. So, just go through it. Till then, thank you.